You always think you'll recognize the moment your life falls apart, you imagine sirens, shattering glass, screaming. But sometimes it's just a phone ringing. And the sound of your own child crying on the other end. The call came late on a Saturday afternoon, just as the sun started bleeding gold across the horizon. That I remember standing in the driveway, keys in hand, thinking about whether to mow the lawn before it got dark. Then my phone buzzed, and everything else, the grass, the sunset, my whole goddamn life, fell away. Dad. The voice was small, broken. Dad, he locked me in the basement. For a second, I didn't move. My brain short-circuited, trying to process the words, basement, locked. He. Who, buddy, who locked you in? My voice was already hoarse, my body stiffening like a man stepping into gunfire. Mom's new friend, he said I was being bad. He said if I told, he'd hurt me. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember opening the truck door. I just know I was driving, tires screaming against the pavement, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every rational thought. Red lights blurred into meaningless streaks. I barely remember steering, only the sick, grinding panic eating away at my gut. The GPS said 20 minutes. I knew I could make it in 15. I had to. Somewhere in the chaos of racing down back roads and hammering the horn at slow-moving idiots, I felt the first crack, that sharp, gutting awareness that my wife, the woman I had loved, had not just betrayed me. She had endangered our son. Somewhere in the chaos of racing down back roads and hammering the horn at slow-moving idiots, I felt the first crack, that sharp, gutting awareness that my wife, the woman I had loved, had not just betrayed me, she had endangered our son. My hands shook on the wheel, images flashed through my mind, my little boy curled up alone in that cold, unfinished basement, terrified, calling for me, and her, somewhere upstairs, maybe laughing with this stranger, maybe not even caring. The road ahead twisted into a blur of anger and disbelief. How long had she been bringing other men into our house, into our son's world? Without a second thought, how had I not seen it coming? Every instinct I had, every primal, furious instinct, was screaming one thing. Protect him, save him, now. I flew down our street like a storm tearing through calm waters, the tires screeching as I slammed the truck into park. The house loomed ahead, our house, but it looked wrong. The lights on inside weren't welcoming, they were a warning, a signal that something had rotted deep inside. I grabbed the tire iron from under the seat without thinking, not because I planned to use it, because I needed to feel something solid, something real. Because everything else I thought I knew was crumbling. As I sprinted toward the front door, my mind raced, a broken reel of questions and accusations. How could she? Who the hell was this guy? What kind of woman brings danger home to her own child? I didn't know what I would find on the other side of that door. But I knew this much. I was done asking for answers. That I was here to take my son back, and whatever stood in my way, God help them, the front door wasn't locked. That almost made it worse, like I was expected, like they didn't even care who might walk in. I shoved it open so hard it banged against the wall, and the moment I crossed the threshold, the stench of betrayal hit me harder than any punch could. The living room, our living room, was trashed, beer cans on the coffee table. A pizza box half slid off the counter, flies already circling it. Someone's boots, not mine, kicked off by the couch. And him. There he was, sitting in my chair, legs spread wide like he owned the place. A beer in one hand, my remote in the other, some punk with a greasy ponytail and a smug, lazy grin that made my fists clench by instinct. He looked up when he heard me. Didn't flinch. Didn't even have the decency to act surprised. Instead, he smiled. A slow, mocking smile. Well, look who finally showed up, he said, voice dripping with disdain. I saw red. Before I could answer, I heard it, a sound that cut through the rage like a knife to the bone. A muffled cry, from the basement door. My son. Without thinking, I moved, stormed across the room, shoved past the stranger like he was nothing. His beer spilled across the carpet, but I didn't care, let him rot in it. The basement door was closed. No light underneath, locked. I rattled the handle, nothing. Hey! I barked back over my shoulder. Where's the goddamn key? Behind me, he chuckled, a low, grating sound. "Relax, man, kid needed some alone time," little punk wouldn't stop whining. I turned. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear, or hesitation, or even anger. I felt something colder. Purer. I walked straight up to him and, before he could react, punched him clean across the jaw. The crack of bone on bone echoed louder than any words. He staggered back, beer bottle flying from his hand, crashing against the fireplace. "You son of a b************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** You locked my kid in a basement. He tried to throw a punch back, clumsy, wild, but he was drunk and slow, and I had something he didn't, purpose. I slammed him into the wall, hard enough that the drywall cracked. Somewhere behind us, there was a shriek. Her voice. Jake, what the hell are you doing? And there she was, my wife. Or whatever was left of her. She stood at the top of the stairs, wearing one of those cheap little dresses she used to only wear for me, her hair a mess, makeup smeared under her eyes like a raccoon, not the woman I'd married. A stranger. Where's the key? I barked, ignoring her stunned look. Give it to me, now. You're scaring him, she cried, clutching at Jake's arm like I was the villain here. Scaring him? I laughed bitterly. Lady, he's lucky he's still standing. Jake muttered something under his breath that I didn't even catch it, didn't need to. I grabbed him again, shoving him toward the basement door. Open it. He fumbled in his pocket, hand trembling now, and tossed me a small brass key. I yanked the door open, heart hammering in my chest, and there he was. My boy. Huddled at the bottom of the stairs, tear-streaked, clutching that ratty old teddy bear he'd had since he was 3. Dad. He bolted up the stairs and into my arms so hard he knocked the air out of me. I crushed him against my chest, feeling the way his small body shook with silent sobs. It's okay, buddy, I whispered, my throat closing up. I'm here. I got you. Nobody's ever locking you away again. Behind me, I heard her start yelling, excuses, accusations, trying to twist it, trying to make me the problem. But I didn't listen. Because in that moment, holding my son, feeling the heat of his tears soak through my shirt, I understood something crystal clear. Whatever this marriage had been, it was dead, and from now on, it was war. I lifted my head and stared at her, really stared. And I promised myself, and my boy, something so deep, so raw, it burned into my bones. I would tear down anything that stood between me and protecting him. I would fight with everything I had, and I would win. No matter how long it took. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. I wasn't surprised, not after the scene I'd made, not after the screaming. Blue and red lights strobed against the windows, painting everything in frantic flashes, my son's tear-streaked face, the beer stains on the carpet, the cracks in the drywall where I'd slammed that bastard against it, evidence of a life coming apart at the seams. 2 officers stepped through the door, one older, solid with a tired look in his eyes, the other young, fresh-faced, trying way too hard to look tough. Sir, step away from them, hands where we can see, M. I obeyed, not because I was guilty, not of anything real, but because I wasn't about to do anything that could cost me custody of my boy. Still, there was a tension buzzing under my skin, a quiet rage begging to be let loose. I could feel Jake smirking behind the ice pack one of the paramedics handed him, his face swelling from the hit. I could feel her, my wife, weaving her story already, laying the groundwork, victim, innocent mother, poor, frightened woman caught between 2 angry men. I stood there, hands loose at my sides, heart pounding. The older officer approached me first. You want to tell me what happened here? I kept my voice low, steady. I came home, found a strange man in my house, found my son locked in the basement. The younger cop flicked his gaze to my wife. And she was ready. Oh, she was ready. Tears welled up in her eyes like she'd been practicing in front of a mirror. Jake wasn't locked down there, he was just, cooling off, she sobbed. He was throwing a tantrum and I needed a minute to talk to my friend. The older cop raised an eyebrow. You cool kids off by putting them in the basement? She faltered, just a flicker, then clutched Jake's arm, nodding frantically. It's been hard since the separation that he misses his father. He's unstable sometimes. Her eyes met mine, wide, pleading, like she was begging me to play along. To keep the secret. To save face, like there was still something between us worth protecting. I felt something inside me snap, quiet, clean, final. I want to press charges, I said, pointing straight at Jake. For unlawful imprisonment of a minor. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. The older cop's gaze sharpened. He stepped between us, motioned his partner forward. Sir, you're gonna need to come with us for a statement. That's when Jake panicked. He started yelling, about how I was crazy, about how I attacked him for no reason. My wife jumped in too, voices layering over each other, a desperate symphony of lies. I didn't move. I didn't have to. Because then, like a small, shaking voice cutting through a storm, my son spoke. No, he said. Everyone froze. Little 8-year-old lungs, quivering, but loud enough to fill the room. He locked me in there. He said if I screamed, he'd hurt me. The silence after that was deafening. Jake's mouth opened, then snapped shut. My wife's face went sheet white. The older cop turned, his jaw tightening. Thank you, son. That's very brave. And just like that, the tide shifted. Jake was cuffed without ceremony, marched out of my house with the young cop keeping a firm hand on his shoulder. My wife tried to follow, babbling, but the older officer held her back. You're gonna want to stay here, ma'am, he said, voice flat. We'll have more questions for you soon. She turned back to me then, and for the first time, I saw the truth plain on her face. Fear. Not fear of me. Not fear of losing some meaningless argument. Fear of losing control. I bent down and picked up my son, who clung to me like a lifeline. The cop nodded toward the door. You're free to go, sir, but someone's gonna need to explain this situation to child services. Good, I said. I'll be waiting. As I carried my boy out of the wreckage that used to be my home, I realized something. There was no marriage left to save. No forgiveness to find. Only war. And this time, it wasn't about hurting her back. It was about saving what was mine, even if it meant burning everything else to the ground. I thought that night would be the worst of it. I thought once the cops had taken Jake away, once child services started digging, once the lies began to crumble, it would be over. I'd won the first battle. I thought the war would slow down, give me time to breathe. I was wrong. 3 days later, I came back to the house. Not to her, not to them, but to gather what was still mine, documents, family pictures, my son's birth certificate, whatever pieces of the life I built that were still worth salvaging. What I found instead was a battlefield already looted. My things, my memories, were scattered across the front lawn like trash. Suits I wore to job interviews. The guitar I played the night I proposed to her. Photos of me holding our son in the delivery room, stomped flat into the mud. It was raining lightly, cold drops dripping off the edges of cardboard boxes. I stood there in the middle of it all, soaked to the bone, the neighbors peeking through their blinds. No one said a word. No one needed to. She wanted everyone to see this. She wanted to humiliate me. There she was on the porch, arms crossed, a sick little smirk curling the corner of her mouth, not even trying to hide it anymore. You don't live here anymore, Jake, she called out sweetly, using the same voice she once reserved for bedtime stories. You made your choice. My son peeked out from behind me, clutching my leg. I felt the rage start to build again, clawing up my throat, the same cold, pure fury I'd felt the night I found him locked away like a piece of broken furniture. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I did something worse. I smiled. It was a thin, hollow thing, more teeth than warmth, but it made her shift uncomfortably, made her arms tighten around herself just a little more. I crouched down next to my son. Go wait in the truck, buddy, I said softly. I'll be right there. He nodded, eyes wide, and sprinted back through the rain without another glance at the woman who used to be his mother. Then I straightened up, wiped the water from my face, and got to work. I moved slowly, methodically, picking through the wreckage for anything that mattered. Birth certificates. Social security cards. Health records. Anything that proved he was mine, legally and in blood. All the while, she watched, arms crossed, tapping one foot like she was daring me to say something. To scream. To break. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I packed what I could into a battered duffel bag, left the rest rotting in the mud. Let her keep the photos, the trophies, the wedding china. I was taking what mattered. I was taking my boy. And her victory parade, her little show for the neighbors, it didn't sting the way she wanted it to. It didn't break me. Because standing there, water dripping from my hair, soaked to the bone and carrying the last pieces of my life over one shoulder, I realized something that hardened my heart like iron. I didn't belong to her anymore. I didn't belong to that house. I didn't belong to their lies. I belonged to the fight. And I wasn't going to lose. Not now. Not ever. They say betrayal is like a knife, what they don't tell you is how deep it can go, how many layers of your life it can cut through before you even realize you're bleeding. I thought I knew what she was capable of. I thought locking our son in a basement, lying to the police, throwing my life onto the front lawn like garbage, that was the bottom. I was wrong. The real betrayal was quieter. It came in manila folders. In forgotten emails. In things she never thought I'd find. It started the day I went back to what used to be our bank, the place where we had a joint safe deposit box that I figured I needed: the birth certificates, tax documents, any legal proof that could help when custody battles came knocking. She must have forgotten about the box. Or maybe she thought I was too broken to remember it even existed. Either way, it was still there, and when I opened it, that's when everything changed. Inside, tucked between our son's old hospital wristband and a yellowing marriage certificate, were papers she never intended for me to see. Receipts. Photographs. Printed out messages. I sat there in that cold little bank office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, piecing it together while my hands shook with something colder than rage. She had planned this. All of it. Months before Jake ever appeared. Before I ever knew there was another man. A new joint bank account opened in her name, and his. A rental application for an apartment across town, one she listed as primary residence, starting next month. Copies of emails between her and Jake, laughing about the divorce trap they were going to set. Talks about keeping the house, about getting me labeled unstable, aggressive, about cutting me out of my son's life entirely. The words blurred in front of me, not from tears. I was too far past crying for that. But from the white-hot pressure building behind my eyes. They had laughed about it. Laughed about me. Just gotta get him to crack once, one email said. Lose his temper in front of the kid, then it's full custody, no contest. Another one, from her. He won't fight that he's too soft, always has been. I'll have everything by Christmas. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. Reading them over and over like if I looked hard enough, they'd rewrite themselves. But they didn't. And I knew, sitting in that hard plastic chair, that the man she married was gone. The man who trusted. The man who believed love was enough. In his place, something colder was rising. Something patient. Something that didn't crack. I gathered every scrap of paper, every receipt, every damning message, and packed them carefully back into the folder. Evidence. A weapon. My lawyer, the one I'd hired after the basement, practically whistled when I showed it to him. You're sitting on a nuclear bomb, he said, flipping through the pages, eyebrows raised. Good, I said. I'm ready to end this. He leaned back, nodding with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're going for full custody, and if you want it, sole ownership of the house too, maybe even damages. For the first time in weeks, something stirred inside me that wasn't fear, or rage, or exhaustion. Hope. Not for my marriage, that was dead and buried. But for my son. For our future. For the life we were going to rebuild, brick by brick, stronger than before. I thought about her then. About Jake. About all their schemes and whispered plans. About how easy they thought it would be to destroy me. They had played dirty. But they had underestimated something important. A man fighting for himself will break. A man fighting for his son will become unstoppable. And I was done playing by their rules. Court isn't like in the movies. There's no sudden dramatic shouts, no pounding fists on the table. It's slow. Cold. Clinical. You walk into a plain beige room that smells like old paper and sour coffee, and you sit at a scratched-up table across from the person who used to be your whole world. Now just another opponent waiting to be broken by the truth. I tightened my tie with shaking fingers as my lawyer leaned in. "Stay calm," he said under his breath. "They're gonna poke you, try to get you to explode. Don't take the bait. You're already winning, let them fall apart." Across the aisle, she sat next to her attorney, whispering furiously. She looked different now. Thinner. Tense. The makeup couldn't cover the fear anymore. She didn't dare meet my eyes. Good. Let her feel what I felt the night I found our son locked in that basement. The judge entered, an older woman with sharp eyes and a mouth that looked like it hadn't smiled in a decade. We stood. We sat. And then it began. Her side went first. They tried everything. They painted me as an angry, unstable man. They said I was reckless, violent, emotionally volatile. They waved around police reports like flags. Omitted the parts about Jake locking my son in the basement. Skipped over the testimony from the officers about how calm I had stayed. At one point, her lawyer actually said the words. Mrs. Carter was simply protecting her child from a volatile situation. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Volatile? Protecting? She left him screaming in the dark while she drank beer upstairs. I looked at my son, sitting in the front row next to a court-appointed advocate. He hugged his knees against his chest, watching everything with those two old eyes. I wasn't fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for him. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood slowly, adjusting his jacket. He didn't shout. He didn't grandstand. He just laid it out, piece by piece, brick by heavy brick. The police report. The 911 call. The testimony from the officer who arrested Jake. The photos of the beer-stained house. The receipts and emails I had found, each one projected onto a cold white screen for the court to see. Her affair. Her lies. Her plot. Every dirty little secret she thought would stay hidden, exposed. I watched her shrink in her chair, her hands trembling. Jake, she hadn't even bothered to bring him, was nowhere to be seen. Coward. And then, the final blow. They called my son to the stand. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But he asked to testify. He wanted to tell the truth. I'll never forget the way he climbed up onto that big oak chair, feet swinging, hands clutching the Bible so tight I thought it might splinter. The court clerk asked him if he promised to tell the truth. He nodded. Once. Sharp. Sure. And then he spoke. My mom said I had to be good when her friend was over, he said, voice trembling but steady. And if I made too much noise, he would hurt me. He locked me in the basement when I cried that I was scared. I called my dad. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. And how did your father act when he came home? He got me out, my son said simply. He hugged me. He told me I was safe. He didn't yell. He just hugged me. The judge sat back. Wrote something down. And in that moment, I knew. I knew. When the judgment came down, it didn't feel real at first. The words echoed dully, bouncing around the courtroom like rubber bullets. Full custody granted to the father. Sole decision-making authority. Supervised visitation for the mother, pending psychological evaluation. It wasn't just a win. It was a clean, crushing victory. I looked over at her one last time. There were no more smirks. No more tears. Just a hollow, shell-shocked woman who had gambled everything, and lost. I gathered my son into my arms, breathing him in, feeling his heartbeat thudding against mine. It was over. The nightmare was over. And we had survived. We didn't go back to the old house. Not even for a second. After the ruling, I packed up the truck with what little we had, 2 suitcases, a duffel bag full of documents, my old guitar, and my son, and we drove 2 towns over to a little place I'd found on a whim. It wasn't much. A 1-story fixer-upper with peeling paint and a sagging porch. But it was ours. Every cracked window, every squeaky floorboard, every stubborn patch of wild grass in the backyard, it was all ours. A place to start over. A place to heal. The first few weeks were rough. The past doesn't just slip off your shoulders because a judge bangs a gavel. There were nights my son would wake up crying, tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, calling my name. There were mornings when I'd find him curled up on the couch instead of in his bed, clutching that battered teddy bear like it was the last thing anchoring him to this earth. I didn't force him to talk. Didn't demand he'd move on. I just stayed close. Fixed the leaky pipes. Painted his room blue, like he asked. Built a rickety treehouse out back even though I had no damn clue what I was doing. Brick by brick, laugh by laugh, we rebuilt something stronger than the wreckage we'd left behind. Sometimes, on Saturday mornings, we sat on the porch with mugs of cocoa, his with extra marshmallows, and listened to the world wake up. No screaming. No cold silences. No strangers coming through the front door pretending to belong. Just us. Just peace. One afternoon, a few months after we moved in, I came home from the hardware store to find him sitting at the kitchen table, crayons scattered everywhere. He looked up, smiling, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in too damn long, and held up a sheet of paper. It was a drawing. Stick figures. A crooked little house. 2 people holding hands in the front yard. He'd labeled it carefully, in messy 8-year-old handwriting. Me and Dad's new home. I stood there for a long moment, swallowing around the lump in my throat. He wasn't broken. He wasn't scared anymore. Neither was I. I don't think much about her anymore. About the life we lost. Sometimes, though, when the house creaks at night, or I catch a glimpse of an old family photo tucked in a drawer I never unpacked, I remember the lessons she taught me. Not about love. Not about forgiveness. About strength. About what it means to fight for what matters. About how sometimes, the worst thing that ever happens to you can strip you down to the bone. And still leave you standing. We don't have a big house. We don't have new cars or fancy vacations. We have quiet nights and inside jokes and Saturday morning cocoa. We have scars. We have survival. We have each other. And that's more than enough.